And now it's time for Rants with Colin, the part of the show where Colin comes out and rants about something. If y'all have been listening for a while, you may remember there were occasional segments in previous years of the podcast of Rants with Colin, the part of the show where Colin comes out and rants about things. And we haven't had those for a little while. I guess it just didn't fit into the nature of some of the topics that we have talked about. Although I guess I have ranted since then. We have the official segment, and it has been far too long. So this entire episode is going to be Rants with Colin. And not only with Colin, because we have the returning Stephanie Connor here to rant with me about whatever is on her mind. We do not know what the other has brought to the table here today.
I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but
oh yeah, we are going to be just as surprised as you are. This could crash and burn really fast, but it is going to be fun while it happens. So welcome back.
I am glad to be here. I am so excited about this particular conversation. I am prepared I have a lot to say.
I think I do too. This whole episode will not necessarily be all rants. I have some positive stuff to talk about too. Really, this is just anything that's been on my mind recently, things I've been watching, theological rabbit trails, random frustrations. It's a little mix of everything that just kind of either isn't long enough for a podcast episode or maybe not even for a short. Maybe it's something I'm still thinking about, but just stuff that I want to get out there. And this seems like the best way to do it, a whole anthology of topics in this week's episode. So it will be controlled chaos, emphasis on the chaos part of that. So welcome to our Snarkcast.
Yeah. I love that name.
All right, before we get too much into the chaos of whatever this is going to become, I do have a quick question for all of you listening. We have been experimenting a little bit with the Nehemiah series that we have been doing, especially in the first 2 episodes, bringing in some guests. My mom was here on the first one, the stuff you don't know, and Buddy Channing on the second for chapter 1. And I am curious, what do you all think of that? Does it help having another voice break up the very nerdy deep dives I go into? Do you find it more distracting than helpful? Do you like the levity that it brings? I can see it going both ways. I've had some feedback both ways, so I think it can help the energy. I'm kind of leaning into having a second person on here when possible, but since you all are the ones listening, we want it to be what helps you learn the Bible better. So let me know. Spotify comments, YouTube, social media, wherever you engage. We're going to keep experimenting either way, but I would like to shape it around what you all find helpful. So please let us know what you think of having a guest on here. Speaking of Nehemiah, I came across 2 books, I'll say, while prepping this series. And I have to share them here. It's not something that's going to fit into the series itself, but it can't go without being shared. The first one, it's actually kind of fun. It's a Nehemiah comic book that I came across.
Well, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I was very wary. I was expecting it to be a really bad representation. It was through Kingstone Comics, which I wasn't familiar with, but I believe it's a Christian publication that does comic versions of Bible stories. I think they may have even been related to one of the groups that did a full-on comic Bible. I don't know. Have you ever seen those? The full, like, it's the whole Bible done in graphic novel style.
I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, they can be kind of cool, but you know, it tends to be a more watered down presentation. But honestly, this one wasn't bad. Like it was super surface level. It was very simplified, but it did not completely butcher the Nehemiah story, and that's better than I expected.
I could see that being helpful for children, especially.
Yeah. That being said, though, the other book that I came across, not so helpful. I need some emotional support after coming across this. I don't know how to preface this, so I'm just going to tell it to you and you can suffer along with me here. All right. So I have this app on my phone called Hoopla, Hoopla. Mom, I believe you're familiar with it. You've used it sometimes, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Yeah, so if y'all aren't familiar, it's actually a super cool app that goes through your library. So if you have a library card, you can just connect it through there. It's with most libraries in the country. And you borrow stuff just like you would from the library, but it's all digital. So they do ebooks, audiobooks, comic books, movies, music. The selection is actually insane that you can have on there, and a lot of Christian material too, like actually some good commentaries and stuff. So whenever I'm looking to do a series, I tend to check Hoopla just to see what do I have free access to right on my computer or phone without even having to go to the library. So it's a pretty sweet resource. I checked out Nehemiah, just searching what they had, and I came across this ebook that I have here on my screen. It is called Nigeria Needs Nehemiah.
Huh?
And it is by, please pardon my pronunciation here, Emmanuel Ogenebrori. Now, I had never heard of this guy. I had never heard of this book. But when you have a book entitled Nigeria Needs Nehemiah, I am just sadistic enough to give it a look. So the description of the book seems to just tell you a little bit about Nehemiah. But then when you actually start reading it, it is incredibly difficult to follow. Okay, I have not planned this out beforehand. I am just going to read a couple sentences at random here. It looks like I'm in chapter 2. Here we go. A famous Nigerian preacher would insist that no man can contest proofs, and he is very correct. John 3 starts with the story of Nicodemus coming to Jesus at night to pledge his loyalty to the Lord. I thought this was about Nehemiah, but okay. More relevant here is the fact that Nicodemus said of the Lord that though the Pharisees criticized him openly, they knew in their hearts from the miracle proofs that Jesus was sent by the God of their pioneer ancestor, Abraham. If someone says that you are a dullard, but you scored A in your subjects in an international examination, people would castigate such critic. So I call it ever enviable evidence.
What?
Okay, again, this was totally at random. I'm sure I could have picked a better example, but honestly, that gives you what the whole book reads like.
That's terrible.
And it may very well be that this guy's first language is not English, and that's fine. You know, like I'm sure he's writing better than I would in his native tongue. However, once I started looking into this guy a little more, because I'm a glutton for punishment, I can't leave well enough alone, I found several other books, all on Hoopla. So heaven knows how many he's actually written. These are just the ones through the app. And I would like to go down a little rabbit trail here, have a little experience with you as I share just some of the titles of his work, all right? There is Until You Rebel, subtitle, God-sponsored rebellion, releasing, rejoicing, rebellion, release, rise to rule and reign in life, God recommended, rewarding rebellion.
Wait, that's the title of a chapter?
No, that was the subtitle of the book.
Oh my gosh.
That is the subtitle of the book itself. There is Exemplary Esau, All Humans Are Helpless, Why You Must Abhor Poverty, Real Reasons Rulers Resist Replacement. So can you tell this guy likes his alliteration? And my personal favorite title out of all these, there's several more I could pick from, but I have to share this one because they're all Bible based in very weird ways. Barack Obama Must Not Fail.
Okay.
Now, may I read you the description of Barack Obama Must Not Fail?
Please do.
Okay. Reverend Emmanuel Ogenbrori can be described as a paper pulpit pastor and a Bible preacher by publication. He is divinely ordained to teach, preach, and publish the gospel of Christ Jesus, and has been teaching and preaching since 1994. He began to publish in 2004 and presides over Emmanuel Ogenebrori Ministries that encompasses several arms. He operates Christ Redemption Publications based in Abadan, Nigeria. He has been published by other publishers overseas. He makes the working word of God relevant to daily living to prepare the saints for heaven. He hosts a monthly Bible seminar every second Sunday at his Nigerian base, Ibadan. His audiences often comment that he gives a realistic interpretation to the Word of God in a way that they have never heard or read previously, and that he directs the Word of God to where it matters in a man's life when it matters most. Did you get any semblance of what this book is about?
Not a single ounce.
Okay, we went on this whole side trail of like at least a half hour when I first found this, going, what the heck is a paper pulpit pastor? All right. It does not seem to be an actual term. Now, as far as I can tell, I couldn't find anything about it online. Maybe it is a colloquialism in his area of Nigeria, but this is the one time that the AI summary on Google may have been a help.
Okay.
Because, you know, it always makes up stuff. Like you can say, what does it mean to be as green as a grasshopper? And I don't know, they'll come up with something and say, that's an actual saying. That means it's like, no, I just made it up. So
Right.
for all I know, it could have just made this up. But it was talking about like having actual paper notes in the pulpit with you when you preach instead of just going extemporaneous and making up whatever you went along the way. So maybe like that makes sense to me. Maybe it's saying that he actually has notes prepared, because I know there are a lot of styles of Christianity in that part of the world that can be a little more just like whatever comes to the preacher's mind. It's not necessarily as much of a prepared sermon, which honestly was often true in our circles too of the IFB.
Definitely.
Yeah. So this was a delightful rabbit trail. I was not expecting to find this guy's books. And the thing that he seems to come back to in like every single one of them is that you should hate poverty because God wants you to be rich. And how, hold on. How you know this is through what he calls brain drain. And brain drain to him means that God has sent people, of course he's one of them, where he has downloaded into their mind his mind, and you should listen to them to find out God's message so you don't have to be poor.
Well, I was going to say I have brain drain.
Oh no, he thought it was a positive thing.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't think that's what he meant.
No, it was absolutely terrible. So that was unexpected.
Yeah, I'm still wondering about Obama though.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, it's free on Hoopla. I feel like I need to give that a read sometime now.
I just feel like he left us hanging.
He really did. I am very curious why Obama must not fail.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh, man. I also want to give one more note about Nehemiah, since we have been somewhat talking about that. And this is a much better note than the last one. We have our first comment on Spotify.
Ooh.
So, yeah, I've been mentioned for a little while that I think it was last year Spotify added in some community features where you could start commenting on the episodes directly if you listen through that platform. So shout out to, I'm going to say it's Rosa Mondab. It was all one word as the username, but you are officially part of our podcast history now. So you comment on there, and I'm able to comment back when I see them. And just a reminder for anyone that does use Spotify, when we have a guest on, now more like an interview episode, not this kind, but on the interview episodes, we usually publish the video as well. And Spotify has also started letting you watch the video versions through there.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, so you don't just have to go to YouTube for a video. You can also use Spotify.
Yes, thankfully we're not doing video today because
yeah, I didn't do my makeup.
It's been a rough day.
So we do love hearing from all of you, no matter what platform you use, even if it's just a, hey, this was interesting, or you're wrong about everything. I mean, if you're saying, hey, it's interesting, we love that. If you're saying you're wrong about everything, just remember this is the Bible for normal people, and my name is Pete Enns. I love getting those comments. Oh, one other piece of housekeeping. We have our first guest post up on the podcast website. So I don't get to blog nearly as much as I would like. I've been focusing mostly on the audio format because that seems to reach more people. But I do every once in a while write something on the blog page, and it's shared with the podcast episodes, but you can click a filter on there and just get the actual blog if you want. And we have our first ever guest post. So I had a friend that I knew that grew up in similar circles to what I did. They've worked in IFB churches, and they had some thoughts, particularly about the afterlife and why the ways that we present heaven and hell and judgment after this life really kind of ruined his faith and sent him on this whole spiral of questioning if any of that was even true. And he did ask to remain anonymous on there, so we are respecting that. I totally get it. Unfortunately, a lot of church environments don't allow you to be your full, honest self. And if you are in the kind of situation where you feel like you have to hide your name just to be honest, that's probably not a healthy one.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's a relationship or a church or a business, whatever it is, that's not a great way to be forced to live. But it's a really good article, and I would encourage you to go check it out if you haven't already. So that's up on our website. I believe the title of it is something like How the Afterlife Ruined My Faith. You should be able to find it pretty easily. It is just from the last month or so that we posted that.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
I am going to check that out.
All right. Well, let's rant. Let's have some fun.
Yeah.
What do you have to rant about today?
Well, I want to say I'm so glad to have this opportunity because of my experience in a church, an abusive church situation. I always felt like I wanted to do something to maybe warn or help other people, but not know exactly how to do it, aside from standing in the parking lot of my old church handing out flyers that say run and don't look back. I appreciate this opportunity. So I have just a few topics that I want to talk about, but I just wanted to give a little bit of my background so that the listeners know how I was involved. I was a part of an IFB church for over 20 years, and I was heavily involved. Like if someone came up to me and said, "Hey, we want to put an addition onto the church," I'd be like, "Yeah, I can do that over the weekend. No problem." I mean, I was a total, I'm going to say yes man, but I did everything that needed to be done, there early, stayed late to clean up after everybody. I mean, and I raised Colin that way.
Yeah, every single service. She's not just saying like once in a while, getting there early and staying late. Oh no, it was, most people are there at church for like an hour and a half a week total. Maybe that's the sermon, that's your hangout time, that's everything else. Oh no, it was.
Yeah,
oh gosh, I don't even know like what, because we'd have to get there by what, like, was it 9:30 on a Sunday?
Well, you could start the fellowship time at 9:30 before Sunday school class, which was what,
so we had to be there
9:45.
earlier.
Yeah, so we were there
like
even
9:15 in the morning, and then leaving 12:30, maybe 1:00.
1:00. Yeah.
If you're lucky,
back.
and then there's Sunday night, and then there's Wednesday night,
and then there's special events. I mean, absolutely everything. We were always going. And I'm trying to think back to time frame, but I'm going to say maybe 2 to 3 years I volunteered in the church office in just doing paperwork, whatever they needed. I did it. And it was like 3 days a week. I'm thinking 2 to 3 days a week I would go in. And
we should say too, with this was a decent sized church. Like it was anywhere from probably around that time, it was probably like 250-ish, maybe a little more. But there were periods where there were 2 full-time secretaries. And there were times when it was just you. So this wasn't just like, doing a little bit of paperwork on the weekend for the pastor. This was a lot of administration stuff.
Right. This was not alphabetizing index cards. This was this was a lot. So then eventually I was offered the position of, what would you say, office manager, assistant to the pastor kind of thing.
Assistant to the regional pastor.
Assistant. Well, and that was also that. Now that was a full-time position. That was 2 to 3 years, and then a lot of things happened, and eventually I left just because of abuses. And I didn't leave quietly. I left and I made it known why I was leaving. And really, that's what I'm going to talk about today. what those really three main reasons. There were more, right? But and I'll just start on the shortest one so Colin can have a turn talking next.
Oh no, Colin takes up way too much time talking, so go for it. Take your time.
Okay. All right.
The people are sick of hearing from me. They want to hear more from you.
Okay. So this actually ties into my story of employment and such. One of my biggest gripes was the misogyny in the church.
Mm.
And I'll give you examples of how that played out.
Before you do, would it be fair to say that you recognize these things as problems when they happened?
Yeah.
And you recognize them as the misogyny that they were?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I'm just making a point of that because especially at that time, you were pretty conservative in beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't, I just want the listeners to know, this isn't like you're a flaming liberal that sees misogyny everywhere. Like you follow the IFB conservative patriarchal culture pretty well.
To a T.
Yeah. So for
Yeah.
you to be seeing this even then is pretty serious.
Well, yeah, because you start seeing cracks
Mm-hmm.
in the foundation. And this just rubbed me the wrong way, even though I was following like the male leadership of the church, of the home kind of thing. But male staff members of the church usually lived in homes that were owned by the church. So parsonages, yes. So there were mortgages, right? But the men
that they weren't paying, that the church was.
They were not paying. They paid low rents. So one man, for example, paid $600 a month for a house, and the church paid the rest of the mortgage. They also got cell phones. Their cell phone bills were paid by the church, by the money given by the church members. Their car insurance was under the church's car insurance, or under the vehicle insurance. And there was a time, I'm going to talk about this, where the men, when they left for different reasons, which we'll talk about later, they would get severances. Okay. I was paid. Now, you heard all of the things the men were given, in addition to their salaries, which the church was very generous to them.
That is one thing I'll say about that, is not every church is this good to their staff.
Right. Well, to their male staff.
Yes, to selectively to their staff.
Yeah. Which I was given $20,000 a year as a full-time, church office administrator, whatever you want to call it.
And this was within the last 10 years, so that was well below minimum wage.
This was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I left, which I left properly, my last paycheck.
May I ask what you meant by, I don't mean to keep interrupting you. I just want to make sure we're following. What do you mean by you left properly?
Okay. I didn't leave quietly with my tail tucked between my legs like the men were told to do when they left, because there were a lot of staff members who left because of abuse, which that's my other topic, abuse. But when I say I left properly, I sat down with the deacons. I sat down with the incoming pastor, and I explained the situation to them very clearly. But when I left, I got my final paycheck, and it didn't seem right. It actually seemed like it was less than it should be. And it turns out it was just because of how their pay periods were structured, which is fine. But my paycheck was about $65 more than it should have been. And I had to pay it back, the $65. And I just said the men got severances.
Yeah, you had an anti-severance. You gave the church a severance package.
I gave the church a severance package. I also asked how my leaving the church was going to be handled when church members would ask about it. and things like that. And I was told by the head deacon that nothing was going to be done because I interacted with such a small portion of the church.
Such a small portion of the how many calls a week and emails and front desk work that
Postcards,
you did?
and
Yeah,
then
postcards. Yeah.
guest services. Yeah. Teaching years of Sunday school. I interacted with a very, very small percentage of the church.
And that was not
So
a very personable guy that said that to you either. So we know you interacted with more people in a week's
right,
time than he did from the church.
right. Part of me was saying, just say their names, Stephanie. Just say their names. Maybe somebody will hear it. So those are just some examples of the misogyny that I experienced, and some of it just while I was still deep within it, but I was really irritated when I started working and actually got to see behind the scenes
Oh
of
my gosh, you'll never see it. Yeah, you'll never see it the same way again going to church.
no, how the men are treated versus how the women are treated. It was just very disturbing, very disturbing.
It is. I can absolutely back that up. There's very much an assumption in a lot of ministry colleges, like where I came from, that the the women cannot get any real degrees. Like you can get an education degree, sometimes you can occasionally get a missionary's degree or a secretary degree, which is usually just a 2-year. But there was a joke about getting your MRS degree. You were just there to get married, to become a Mrs. And that's really what it is, because when a lot of churches are taking on pastors, I'm speaking in the broader evangelical fundamental world here, the actual like mainline churches tend to be not quite as overt about it, but you are hiring a pastor and an unpaid slave in his wife, or very, very minorly paid, like you are getting free labor. That's part of why so many churches require you to be married to be on staff. Now, they'll say it's because of sexual lust and temptation, and they don't want the guy giving in, as if some married guy has never committed adultery before. But it's really also about getting a 2-for-1 deal on the church's side. And
That's a good point.
Yeah, and it's rooted in the patriarchal complementarian culture that a lot of churches have, where there is the assumption that the men are the full humans and the women are there to complete the men, to help the men. And it goes back to the first couple chapters of Genesis and a misunderstanding of what it means to be a helpmeet. I've ranted about that before on the podcast, where we had a literal class in a college that was called Helpmeet, just for women, just for them to learn to be good wives. When helpmeet isn't a word, it's 2 words that are saying you are a corresponding partner that fills in the gaps where the other person has weaknesses. That goes both ways. That's for the male or for the female. God, that term, it's etzer connecto, as I recall, and it's more frequently used of God than anyone else in the Bible. So it does not mean a lesser person.
Right.
But that mindset just stays in there. And if you asked anyone at that church, do you think women are less than men? I would hope that more than 1 or 2 would say, no, absolutely not. But they really do, because their actions show it.
Yep. Yeah, they're not going to come out and say it. They won't. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
But
very good points. I want to bring in a positive aspect of pastoral care, because I was listening this week to one of Jonathan Foster's podcasts. He just came out with another one called Off Canon. So he's had the Jonathan Foster podcast, he's had Curian, which started last year, and now he has Off Canon, which just started. So the guy has way too many podcasts. You remember Jonathan Foster being on ours with the grief episode?
yes.
A year or two back? Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Awesome guy. I've gotten to meet him at Theology Beer Camp. So he has this newish podcast from last year called Curian, Curian. It's based on their new Curian network, which I'll just do a little plug here, is working to provide ordination for pastors that maybe have lost it or are no longer able to get it through a denomination. So it's like for deconstructing people who may no longer fit in the mold, this is a place where you can get an ordination without fear of losing it if you no longer fit the box.
Oh,
Yeah, so
that,
it's really cool. So
that's helpful. That's a great
it really
resource.
it is, and we've linked to it on the website, on our website, because I think it would be helpful for some listeners. But he does this Curian podcast with Jill Elizabeth, and they said something that really stood out to me. They said that the pastor's role is to be a non-anxious presence in the church.
Mhm.
I've been thinking about that since I heard it, because so many pastors, especially in the kinds of churches that we came from, they operate completely out of anxiety.
I was going to say, I've never experienced it without.
No, they're anxious on their end about saying the wrong thing, about losing people, about politics and what they're allowed to say. But then they're also anxious in their theology. They're anxious about what they deem to be the culture wars and what the people in their church are getting into that they don't approve of. And they bring that anxiety into the pulpit to meet with people who are already anxious.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need a spiritual leader amplifying that by screaming at them about everything they've done wrong and how the world's going to hell in a handbasket.
Right.
They need someone who's grounded, someone who's steady, someone who can actually hold space without causing them to spiral more. And I just thought if churches could embrace that, it would actually change a lot.
Mm-hmm. It really would. Yeah. I just, there was, my life was full of anxiety in the church.
Mm,
When I left, I remember just feeling a weight lifted off of my shoulders and a freedom from that anxiety from so many directions, whether it be, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of God's love, am I being a good enough wife for my husband? If he's not
mm.
acting properly toward me, what am I doing wrong? I mean, it was just so much anxiety, so much. So I get that.
Yeah. Now, would you say that you were prone to anxiety even before you joined the IFB church?
Oh yeah, yeah. I am anxiety prone, but I feel like, and I still am. I left
Mm,
the IFB. I mean, I still have tendencies toward anxiety. I have OCD, and so that's just a normal battle to me, but it was magnified within the church.
mm,
My 20 years in that church was some of the worst time of my life for
mm.
that. The most stressful, just internal struggle, most stressful in my marriage.
Mm.
You know, it was a very difficult time. Very, very difficult time.
Did you ever see the church as the reason for that, or was that put on you or other circumstances and the church was the answer?
Yes,
Yeah.
until I left and I
Mm-hmm.
was looking in from the outside and I'm like, oh no,
Mm,
that's wrong. The church was the problem. The
mm,
church was the issue, not me,
mm.
not my husband. It was the church, what it does to you and to your mindset and just the pressure of it. I'm going to tell you something funny, and the
Mm.
listeners, not a lot of people would even know this, but when my last day leaving the church, my last day at the office, I came out to my car and I was blaring a song by Travis Tritt, a country singer, more from the 90s, which was not allowed, mind
No, not at
you.
all.
I mean, so the fact that I was doing that was like my first act of rebellion against the church. But yeah, just listening to it blaring in the song was It's a Great Day to Be Alive. And I
Mm,
felt that. I felt that for
mm,
the first time in years. And why did I feel that when I left the church? You're supposed
mm.
to feel that in the church. It was,
Well, someone once wrote a long time ago that when you know the truth will set you free.
mm-hmm, right.
And that
So,
just so happens to often be outside the four walls with a steeple on top.
yep, that is so true. So true.
Mm,
I'm so
mm.
thankful to be on this side of it.
Yeah, I can absolutely confirm it's been the biggest shift. Like I've mentioned here on the podcast before that last year I started on antidepressants, which was one of the best decisions I've made in a long time. It was long, long overdue. And it was like an overnight shift in the way I was able to see myself and the world. And that level of shift is what being out of church has done for our family too.
Mm-hmm.
It was a
Absolutely.
night and day. Now, not like flipping a switch. That took a lot more time to heal, but it's been so much healthier, so much better.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we actually don't mind each other now.
Right. I mean, our relationships, even your dad and I were just talking last week, like how sad it is that it took us this long to get to
Mm,
this point because we enjoy each other's company so much. When he's
mm,
not around, I miss him. We
mm,
just have so much fun together. And even the relationship, I mean, honestly, I didn't even know our relationship was strained with
mm,
you while we were in
mm.
the church because I was just like, we're doing what we're told to do. It's the best thing to do.
Yep.
Not realizing that. And I feel like our relationship has
Mm,
gotten better and you've opened up
mm,
things that a lot we didn't even know, and
absolutely.
which was heartbreaking, but I'm so thankful that we have that ability to open up and be honest with each other without taking offense to it or
Mm,
so it's just so weird. You wouldn't expect it outside the church. It's supposed to happen
mm-hmm.
inside the church, but life is has gotten so much better,
Yeah.
since we left, and I'm grateful for that. So,
And and there are some people who find genuine meaning and betterment in church, and it's always a mixed bag. But I think a lot of times in fundamental and evangelical churches, it causes more harm than good.
mhm.
And everyone's experience is different. It's actually kind of funny as we've transitioned out. We've had several friends that have transitioned in more than they were before. And if they're finding meaning in it, that's great. But it's it's not as simple as a lot of preachers would want you to feel like, oh,
Mhm.
just keep coming to church, keep reading your Bible, keep praying, and everything will be better. Not everything works the same way for everyone.
Mhm. That's true. And nothing against people who are finding fulfillment there. I'm just talking about the situation in our particular church community and
Yeah,
the dangerous behaviors that are that happened and are still happening.
yeah.
So,
No, I appreciate you calling it out because that often flies under the radar for a lot of people, especially who don't know what goes on behind the scenes in the church.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm glad I got to see behind the scenes
yeah,
because it was one of the stepping stones to getting out.
yeah. That is true. Nothing will make you want to get out of church faster than helping to lead one.
Mhm.
So if you're wondering about whether or not you should stay in church, volunteer to help out some more. You'll be out the door before too long.
Yeah. And for your betterment.
Mm. There was another podcast I was listening to recently. And I can't remember which one it was. I wish I could, but I listened to way, way, way too many podcasts. And I've started some more recently. But they were commenting on how a lot of Christians believe in an Old Testament Jesus.
Mm.
And what they meant by that was to draw on the common difficulty of seeing a violent God of the Old Testament, a loving, forgiving God in the New Testament, like a lot of people think is there. And in speaking of Christian nationalism and how often American evangelicalism and fundamentalism sacrifice their values because they want a vengeful Jesus, like they perceive God being in the Old Testament to take out all their enemies. So I kind of like the point they made, but it also had me thinking because obviously Jesus isn't in the Old Testament.
Mhm.
Right? He was born after all of that was written. And that's part of why I really liked how they put it, because it shows just how much we read into the text. I was taught growing up to find Jesus on every page of scripture, even if he
Mhm.
wasn't the point of the passage, the chapter, or heck, even the book. I even just recently heard a YouTube channel. that said that was their stated goal, to show Jesus on every page of scripture.
That's not helpful.
No, it sounds good. It sounds churchy, but we've talked about this before here. To say that the scriptures are fulfilled in Jesus does not mean that Jesus is on every single page. It means that the overarching narrative leads to his redemptive work and the new life that he brings. It does not mean that we should read him into stories that are not about him. The stories of the Tanakh had meanings for hundreds of years before Jesus came around. And this is a little bit of a rant for me here. I get heated about it because I often feel like one of the most common things I have to do is reclaim the Jewish texts from us Christians, just to show fellow Christians what they actually meant. And I am Christian. I still love Jesus, but we have actual books in the New Testament written about him. We do not have to abandon the literal meaning of texts to create a spiritual meaning where suddenly every story is an allegory for someone who wouldn't live another several hundred years. So let's not worship an Old Testament Jesus. Let's remember who he actually is in the books that are actually about him.
And by doing that, you're encouraging people to twist scripture to fit the narrative that you're trying to portray. So
exactly. Exactly. I mean, there's a long-standing tradition. I don't know if you've ever heard this or not, but that, you know how evangelicals, really Christians in general, just don't know what to do with Song of Solomon. You don't hear it preached because it's so uncomfortable. And believe you me, listeners, we are going to get to that book eventually, and it is going to be fun, because whatever you think is awkward and uncomfortable about that book is just a fraction. It is barely the tip of the iceberg. Yes, I just said it was just the tip of Song of Solomon. But there's this whole long-standing tradition, because Christians cannot accept that this is erotic love poetry in the Bible, that it's actually a metaphor about Jesus' love for the church.
Oh, it's nauseating.
That is hundreds upon hundreds of years old. And that's exactly what you're talking about. That has nothing to do with Jesus. Now, if you want to say it's a beautiful portrayal of love, and Jesus has a beautiful portrayal of love, and they parallel each other, fine. But don't make this about Jesus. And I hate saying that as a Christian, because like I still think he's the point, but not of every single page. And when we make it all about him, we actually flatten the text. In trying to respect it, we're actually disrespecting it, because now we can't see what the text is actually about. We're forcing our interpretation, which is called eisegesis, you are reading into the text instead of what should be done, which is exegesis, you are drawing out of the text what is already there.
And when Jesus hears sermons about the Song of Solomon being about him, he's like, oh, please don't speak so. Yeah, that's not me. That's not what that means.
There was a worship song. I don't think you would know this, because this was far too contemporary Christian for the church we were in. My mom has a 20-year bubble, a blip in her life where culture did not happen. It's like one of those spy thrillers where the guy wakes up with amnesia and doesn't remember what happened for the last 20 years. That's kind of what's been going on. So I don't think you would know this, because it was way too worldly for our church. But there is a infamous worship song. Overall, it's not a terrible worship song, but there is a legendary line in it that heaven meets earth in a sloppy wet kiss.
Oh no.
And it has been the subject of so many polemics by people that are like, no, you can't talk about God that way. And I'm like, have you read Song of Solomon? Like, I'm not saying I'm going to sing those lyrics with 200 other people on a Sunday morning. but it's not without precedent.
Right. Oh, that's
so there's
funny.
your mental image for the day, is getting French kissed by Jesus.
The things you say. Thank you for that.
Right. You want to bring in part 2?
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about abuse.
Let's do it.
All right. So why am I
That should serve as its own content warning. I'll just put that out there.
Yeah. And by this, I do not mean physical abuse. I don't know if there were instances of physical abuse, but I just remember Colin commenting on this to a friend of his, about, he was maybe warning, maybe, or speaking
Hmm.
out against the abuser.
I think I
And
know what you're talking about. Yeah.
and his friend said, but he never touched me. And it's like, that's not the only type of abuse. But anyway,
No, and
so
especially since I had clarified earlier in that conversation, as far as I know, there has not been any physical or sexual abuse. This is emotional abuse. This is spiritual abuse. This is manipulation. This is gaslighting. I said, these are the problems. There are multiple types of abuse.
right, exactly.
Or, as I said, when I met with the leaders of that church, and I am so proud of this line, I think I want this line on my gravestone one day. I said, abuse is abuse, whether it leaves scars on the skin or on the soul.
That's right. That's very good. That's very good. And it's true. And frankly, I still have those scars, to be quite
Hmm.
honest, and probably will for a long time. So, just general abuse. We were told from the pulpit that we could not listen to our desperately wicked hearts.
Yep.
We couldn't, whatever our heart was telling us. However,
Cold, cold heart.
we had to, as we're listening to the interpretation from the desperately wicked heart of our pastor or
Right?
our
Why is he exempt
speaker.
from that?
Why is he exempt from it? Why can he interpret better than I can? And in most
Mhm.
cases, he cannot.
That is actually true. I think
It,
you could probably interpret most passages without Bible college education better than they could.
yeah, I mean, it's just so infuriating. Yeah. So for years, I never trusted my emotions. I never trusted
Mhm.
when I was hurt about something. I was never very good about putting my feelings to words, which
Yeah.
I'm glad for your podcast. I'm glad for the people you interview, during
Mm.
spiritual abuse month, things like that. It helps to give me verbiage to what I'm feeling. But
Spiritual Abuse Awareness Month, that word is very important. We,
oh
we
yeah,
do not have a spiritual abuse month.
thank you, Colin.
Awareness.
As I said, it's been a rough day. Thank you for correcting me.
uh,
But you know, it's just it helped me. But so for so long I had suppressed emotions because I didn't know how to express them. And besides
mhm.
that, I wasn't allowed to listen to my sinful, desperately wicked, sinful heart. So
Mhm.
there again, that came that anxiety, a lot of pent up frustration that I carried for a lot of years. And you're constantly, this, I consider this abusive. You're constantly being told you're a sinner, you're a worm, you're
Yep.
not worthy of God's love, but because he's a loving God, you don't deserve to go to heaven. You deserve hell. And when you hear this week in, week out, you may not experience it as you're hearing it, but it kind of grooms you into thinking that you're worthless. Like hearing
Mhm.
it for week after week, year after year, you feel worthless, you know? And that's hard to come out of. But that's general abuse that I heard from the pulpit. But now to get specific, do you have anything to say about that, Colin?
I do. I want to confirm what you said there because it is abuse. And here's how you know, because I can't help but think there may be some listeners who are going, but that's all in the Bible. Like it can't be abuse if it's in the Bible. Okay, switch out. Here's the trick. This is the one-stop trick. Works every time to know if what you are hearing in church is healthy or not. Replace God with a human partner in the sentence. And if what they are saying about God, when put in the mouth of a human partner, would be labeled abusive, it's still abusive.
Mm-hmm.
If you had a human partner who was constantly saying what a terrible person you are, how you are just a worm in their sight, how you don't deserve their love, that
Mm-hmm.
would be abusive.
Right.
And just because the person happens to live in the sky instead of next to you does not make it less so.
Mm-hmm. And that does not foster a loving relationship with God. It
No,
fosters a fearful relationship with him.
healthy relationships are never based in fear.
Yeah, honestly, being in the church for 20 years marred my view of God and
Mm,
my relationship with him. It just did. My relationship with God got better outside of the church. Although church people would
oh
tell
yeah,
you that's not possible. You can't
yeah.
do that. You can't forsake the, gathering together of the saints
Hmm.
because they want to keep you and they want to keep your tithes and they want to keep your free labor, also abuse.
Yep.
But anyway, so specifically as being part of the staff, although I wasn't really considered staff because I was a female, only the men were staff.
Well, you
But
didn't really interact that much with the people in the
with the
church.
people, our pastor had resigned.
Mm.
Okay. So we were in between, the deacons were trying to just put somebody in. They were leadership of the church at the time, and I think they were getting tired of it. And I'm not going to say they didn't do
Mm.
the research they should have done before the choice that they made, but you know. But anyway, I was in a meeting with two male staff members. The abusing staff member yelled, yelled
Mm.
at the other staff member. I was sitting right there. I mean, he let him have it. And then after the meeting, he came up to me and he's like, "How do you think that went?" I'm like, "You were out of line." "Oh, you think so?" "Absolutely. You were
Mm.
completely out of line with how you spoke to so and so." But this is I'm stating this to just give the listeners an idea of what was going on in the church. The same staff member, we had a meeting. The pastor was still there at the time. We had a staff meeting. He out and out lied. It was about, if I remember right, it was a fall festival tract.
Like an
Uh,
invite to give out
an
to the neighborhood.
invite
Yeah.
for the church. Now, I was in the office when this tract was being developed. Okay. The man who had you would say what, graphic design background, Colin, right?
Oh, he was much more skilled in graphic design than the
Very,
person. Of.
yeah, yeah. So the man who's skilled in that area creates a tract, which was nice.
Yeah.
The abuser didn't like it, told him to change a couple things. He changes it, brings it back to the abuser. The abuser doesn't like it, changes it. Once more changes made, he makes the changes. Well, anyway, this goes on a few times at least. So days after, we're in a staff meeting, and I'm going to call him the abuser. I want to say his first name so badly. But in the meeting, the pastor said, I don't like this. It's,
And we can objectively say it looked like crap by this point.
yeah, he's like, it's an unattractive invite. And he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, well, so and so did it." The man who kept making the
Hmm.
changes that he told to do.
Hmm.
My face, I could feel just the redness climbing up
Hmm.
to the top of my head. And I didn't say anything at the time. The meeting was over. I walked immediately out of the room, go down
Hmm.
to the office, and the pastor knew that something was wrong and asked, and I told him like that. I was there. I saw what happened. So my point in saying this is I witnessed his yelling at people. I witnessed his lying like he wasn't even lying. He's a skilled liar, a
Hmm.
skilled
He
liar.
believes it himself sometimes, I think.
Yes. So, long story short, 9 staff members, including myself,
Mhm.
left the church,
Wow.
all because of this man, because he would yell at them. The abuser's wife, also abusive, would
Mm.
say unkind, unnecessary things to the wives of the staff members. Well, they leave and nobody says anything. It's a mystery. Nobody knows why
Mhm.
anybody left.
Yeah.
And then,
And
because
several
they're,
church members too. Like it wouldn't just be staff. There were just
yeah.
average people in the pews that left because of them too.
And it was just so like, what is going on? Because at the time, I was not behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But when it was time for me to leave, because of all of this going on. And it wasn't, those are just two examples. There were consistent, repeated behaviors. I met with the deacons and I told them exactly what was going on. And they said to me, but he's a hard worker. I
Mhm.
said, so are convicted criminals. Would you
Yeah.
keep them on staff? You know, if I mean, is he a hard worker? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I said that. I said, I am not
Don't be
denying
friends.
that, but that cannot be the determining factor for keeping someone on staff when
Yep.
you have these abusive tendencies. And I told them, I remember telling them specifically, he's going to be the last man standing. And it's
Mhm.
not because he's the best man for the job. It's because nobody can work with him. So I
It's like a
left.
persistent squatter that just stays there until everyone else leaves the house.
Yes. Then the new pastor was coming in. He called me in to ask me about the situation. And I told him the same thing.
Mhm.
And he's like, okay, I appreciate your information. And we're 5 years out that I
Mhm.
left and had to pay back my $65 from
Yeah.
overpayment. That man is still slithering around that church.
Mhm.
And the people there are so brainwashed.
Mhm.
But I did not leave until I started seeing cracks, and then
Mhm.
you have to have something that gets you to that point, but they're
Yes.
so blinded to it. And Colin, you spoke to the deacons. What did they say about getting rid of him?
I'll leave that as a cliffhanger because we're gonna have more coming out about that in the next couple months.
Okay. All right. I'll leave that's your story. I will leave that
Yeah,
to you.
I'll be telling more of that story in the summer.
Okay. But my point in saying all of this is I did not stay silent. The men who left before me were wrong in leaving that way. The
Yeah.
reason why he's still there, they perpetuated the abuse by not saying anything. And I thought, I'm not doing that. People need to know. So when I see people out and about, because I still live in the area, I'm very happy to share with them why I left and, call them out on it. People need to know. And I'm not doing it to badmouth him. I am doing it to warn people. There's a difference. I'm trying to warn them of the abuse that's going on there.
This point, it's not about getting back anything. It's about preventing future hurt.
It's about preventing future hurt. That man should have been put out on his ear years ago, but we're more concerned about having a hard worker. God would never want that. That's not what he would want. And it's not. And then I was told when he had done something offensive to me, I had to approach him, which is fine. That's the right thing to do. But all he did was talk in circles. He did
Mm-hmm.
not acknowledge what he did. It just went around. And I had a former pastor at that church tell me, don't waste your time. He's just going to keep talking in circles. And he's still there.
Yep.
And the abuser's there, the former,
Mm-hmm.
it's infuriating. It's infuriating. Can we stop the abuse in the church? This is not what God had intended for a group of believers. And when you had Tia Levings
Yes.
on,
Yeah.
that was such a good interview. And
Oh, it
one,
was. If you guys haven't listened to that yet, please go listen, go read her book. She was awesome to talk to.
yeah, listen and be warned, and help to be aware. But something she said was, and everybody may not agree with this, and that's fine, but she will not be a part of an organization that requires her faith. And
Yeah.
I loved that, because when it requires your faith, she didn't necessarily say this part. This is me saying it. When it requires your faith, it opens up the doors for manipulation and
Mm-hmm.
abuse. And again, she was one of those people that gave me words to things that I was feeling. and
Yeah,
I
she
love
does
that.
very well.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, she's been through a lot. But and there's more. I mean, I just made a list because otherwise Colin said he'll just turn the computer off and shut me off. But those are just, so that's misogyny and abuse. And I have one more short topic whenever Colin lets me talk again. But these are just, the few things that caused me to leave and infuriate me that people are still under it.
So you mentioned there, as you were talking about all that, that you need a crack in the foundation, something to push you over the edge.
Mhm.
And you even described being in there as being similar to being brainwashed, where you don't see
Mhm.
the harm that's being done. You don't notice everything until you've left. So we both know good people who are
Mm.
there
Mhm.
and live in that cognitive dissonance, and
Mm.
many of them don't even see the cognitive dissonance. They don't even realize there's that 2 + 2 isn't adding up.
Mhm.
So what was it for you that pushed you over the edge? What was the last straw that you realized this isn't just something I can stay here and live with, but it's actually enough to leave?
The last straw was the
Or at least the
fight.
tipping point. Yeah.
It was a lot of things up to that point. I would say was the fight in the staff meeting.
Mm,
Yeah. Like I saw that and like you stand in the pulpit and you tell people how to act and to live their
mhm,
lives, but you're behind this office door yelling
yep.
at another staff member. I No, you shouldn't be allowed to stand in that pulpit.
No,
You
not at
you
all.
you hypocrite. You hypocrite.
Yeah,
And
I
I'm gonna
personally don't think that guy should ever be allowed to preach anywhere again.
no,
Just consequence,
but they're going to perpetuate the abuse,
uh,
and what I will say this, and I should have listened to this because your dad was a police officer for 28 and a half years, and when I left, he said to me, the moment I met him,
mhm,
which was probably 15 years ago because he came in after, no, maybe not even that much, maybe 10, I don't know. He's
mhm.
like, the moment I met him, I had red flags. Red
And I've heard a
flags.
lot of people say that.
Yes. Yep. And then I had a preacher's wife say the same thing
Mm,
because of how he handled a situation.
yep.
I mean, he wanted control of everything and
Mhm,
everybody. It was do you we had two church members pass away at the same
mm,
time, and whoever made the phone call to the church made it to my voicemail.
mm,
And he called me wanting the password or the passcode to my voicemail because he said there was an emergency or whatever. So I gave it to him so he could listen to the message. And then the following morning, this was at night. So the
yeah.
following morning, the other staff member says, "Hey, how are you handling this tragedy?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
Mm,
I was never told by that. I'm going to call him the abuser. And I was told it was because it had to be kept private. I'm like, I take care of tithing records.
yeah.
I sit in on confidential meetings,
Yeah.
confidential counseling sessions.
Oh, yeah.
You ask,
You learn things about people's marriages you never wanted to know, and
right?
you
And
can't learn that a longtime church member died.
unbelievable. So the next day I changed my code, never to
Yeah.
give it to him again. As a matter of fact, when I left, I never gave it to him.
Yep.
So they probably had to shut the system down. It was probably
Personally, I think
very,
you should have changed all the passwords and then just walked out.
yeah. Oh, it just the control, the control aspect of it, the abuse, it was terrible. It was terrible.
No, I'm glad you bring all that up because I think some of the things that you mentioned in isolation, people see them and they think, oh, it happens. Ministry is a stressful environment. Like they're not physically abusing people. Like that's the thing it always comes down to, right? And they believe the Bible, they believe in Jesus. So we excuse so much BS that is not supposed to be excused. Your actions matter a lot louder than what beliefs you say you mentally assent to. So I think calling that out as you have can maybe help some people see, no, it's not normal. No, it's not okay. Because sometimes you just get numb to it and you think your experience is normative for everyone else. So it takes people calling it out and saying, no, that's not okay.
Yeah. And you need to call it out. Don't be afraid to call it out. And even if nothing is done, like in my situation, you can put your head on your pillow at night knowing you did the right thing, calling out the abuse. But and then he's known or says he's known as a soul winner, or people know him as a very good soul winner, meaning he shares the gospel and wins people, to, what would you say, the faith? How would you say it?
That's how they would put it.
To the belief system, whatever. And I'm like, well, don't bring them into this, because it's horrible.
He's not even that good. He does it a lot. He is very aggressive.
Yeah, aggressive and awkward and embarrassing.
Yeah. There's honestly not that many people who have been quote unquote saved or even that have attended the church because of him. He just yells at them a lot. He's not actually effective. He's just aggressive.
Right. He just wants to say, I mean, if a delivery driver came in, he's witnessing to them. I'm like,
oh yeah, I was a part of several of those conversations.
It's just, ew, stop. You're just being weird. You're just being weird. But that's, that could have been a whole nother topic.
Oh, it can be, yeah. There's one thing talking about just like sharing your faith, because there might be some people from other traditions that are like, well, what's wrong with that? No, we're not saying, oh, this is why I love Jesus. No, we are saying somebody literally is here just to drop off an Amazon package, and all you say is hello, and do you know for sure if you're going to heaven?
Yeah.
Then you just start reaming them out until they are awkwardly walking backwards to their car,
right,
as fast as they can.
I mean, and as a believer, I was cringing, like, oh, that's embarrassing how you're handling that. I would not, because I would just think you're weird if I were on the other end. But yeah, hey, the next time you have a rant cast, let me know, because that could be another topic. Evangelism, forceful, what do they call it? Confrontational evangelism.
Yes, yeah. And that is actually held up as a positive in those circles.
Yeah, that's not positive. I can tell you that.
No, not at all. No, those are good points, and I appreciate you sharing it. Let's lighten the mood a little bit, talking about...
Can I just say, I spew negativity, and then right after, Colin's like, and now for a positive point. You bring the positivity.
Completely different.
I'm sorry.
Hey, this is a rant episode. Let's transition to talking about some shows that I have been watching recently that tie into faith and religious experience.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, we will try to block out the time segments of what we're talking through here, because I do want to give a warning up front that there will be spoilers for the shows Star Wars, Maul Shadow Lord, The Boys, Daredevil Born Again, and also the movie Undertone. So if those are any things that you are looking to watch and have not watched yet, you might want to skip these parts. So as pretty much all of you know, I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. And if you care anything about Star Wars, please, 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 please go watch Maul Shadow Lord. It is an animated show on Disney Plus. That does not mean it is a children's show. This is an incredible cartoon. This is the version of Darth Maul that we should have been getting 20 years ago. This is the treatment he has deserved since the character was created. And I promise I will not nerd out too much on the details because I know my mom is not the biggest Star Wars fan, and I can't help but imagine most of you listening don't care as much about that. But there is a reason I'm bringing this up. It is not just to be a Star Wars nerd. What I really love about the show is the nuance. Because if you've seen episode 1, The Phantom Menace came out in 99, Darth Maul is the devil-looking Sith villain and doesn't speak much at all. I think he has like 2 lines in the entire movie. The very iconic villain has the double-bladed lightsaber and everything, but he's just a straight-up bad guy, and he gets sliced in half at the end of the movie. Well, Star Wars lore throughout the years since had him survive that fall, and he eventually came back in the Clone Wars and everything, and it was good. He's a good character. But this show really shows him nuanced, and it shows he's not just a villain. He actually has a somewhat sympathetic backstory where he was stolen away from his tribe, from his family at a very young age by a religious fanatic, Darth Sidious, and trained in that guy's ways, taught a whole different belief system, taught to use other people, to take advantage, to manipulate. He's a master tactician. And he uses all those skills, but he also starts to crack a little bit. In fact, in this week's episode, as we were recording, so I think it was episode 7 of the show, you even see flashbacks of him as a child being taken away from his family, and you start to feel for him a little bit. But what I find really fascinating is he has these interactions with a Jedi Padawan who's hiding from the Empire. This show takes place between episodes 3 and 4. Her name is Devon, and he ends up capturing her, and he's trying to break down, dismantle her assumptions about him. She's constantly scared of him. She knows who he is, and she's like, "You're a monster. You're a murderer." And he just says, "I'm whatever you think I am." And he starts calling out not just the assumptions about him, but also the assumptions about herself. And he mentions how she had been indoctrinated since childhood as well, because the Jedi took children from their families and taught them a whole religious system of beliefs. And so every way that she sees the world and sees him is completely colored by the Jedi, for better or often for worse. And so he turns into still not a hero. He's definitely still a villain, but it's not this clean-cut good versus evil dynamic. It becomes this messy conversation about identity, perspective, and who gets to define truth when your entire system of belief crumbles around you, because the Jedi Order had been dismantled by this point. So she is clinging on to the sense of identity that this cult gave her, just like he was from the opposite end of the spectrum. And he's trying to say, you have never thought for yourself. And even though the Jedi Order is no more, you still aren't thinking for yourself. You are still treating me how the Jedi told you to treat me. And it just made me think about church. And when you leave a religious environment, in a lot of cases, you can feel unmoored. You can feel scared. And so you stay in your own previous mindsets because that's what's comfortable. That's what you know. And the world around you, you were told is scary. And sometimes it is. I mean, Maul is a terrifying person to be around, but maybe it's also not as bad as you thought it was. And maybe there's some goodness. And as Devon opens herself up in the show, not just to Maul, but also to other characters, she's actually able to be a force, no pun intended, for good. And as she no longer sees in black and white, she's able to make better decisions because she isn't just automatically labeling everyone else around her as either on her side or against her. And I think that's really accurate portrayal of how, at least in my own life, I've come to see other people that were villainized and treated as other because they didn't believe or behave or identify exactly like I did.
Yeah, that's a good connection there. Yeah, I didn't think for myself for 20 years. I thought what I was taught, told to think. Which is frustrating to think about now,
It is. It is. So if you care in the least bit about Star Wars, please go watch that show. It is beautifully animated. The attention to detail. There's even a scene, and I think it was the 8th episode, where Maul jumps through a waterfall and you see steam coming off of his lightsaber as he did. And it's just, beautiful. I put that scene back like 3 times just to rewatch it because it looked so cool. But it has good application for those who are deconstructing.
Hmm.
And the next thing I want to talk about here is a movie that you happened to see with us. With Jana was with us, and it was called Undertone. Now, this is a horror movie, so I realize that may not be the wheelhouse for everyone on here, but as I've talked about early on in the podcast, we did a Sacred Nightmare series talking about horror in the Bible. I think it can actually be one of the most faithful, like full of faith genres of movies out there. Not just because it's dealing with demons and spirits and ghosts and all that, but it really pulls out questions about good and evil and the darkness inside all of us. So this movie, Undertone, one of the most interesting horror concepts I've seen in a while, because you only actually see 2 characters on screen the entire movie. And everything else is just through voice, it's through implication, it's through tension. The story follows this woman, Evie, who does like a true crime kind of podcast with a friend, and you only ever see her and you see her mother. Anyone else, you just hear their voice and they're off screen, which is really, really cool. And it's acted super well. Well, Evie finds out she's pregnant with her estranged partner's child, as she has been away from home trying to help take care of her dying mother. And her mother's basically not in a coma, but unresponsive.
Mm-hmm.
And as she finds out she's pregnant, she's wrestling with whether or not she's even capable of being a mother. And there's a lot of fear there. There's fear of repeating generational trauma, fear of not being ready, fear of becoming like her own mother, fear of what if the relationship with the partner doesn't work out. And then things get really weird as they're recording the podcast, because they start listening to these messages that have weird hidden messages in them. And they come across this demonic entity, abusive, which in the mythology of the film was tied to this ancient demon that would lead to miscarriages. And the film starts blending psychological horror with spiritual symbolism. And there's this parallel storyline with all of this going on of her dying mother that raises questions about end-of-life care, dignity, suffering, all of that. Well, I know there were several people who walked out of that film thinking it was just an anti-abortion film. And part of that came from, there was a scene where they get a live call during the podcast while they're recording, because they have that open where people can call in while they're recording. And this voice asks to speak to Mary. And they say, oh, there's no Mary here. And the voice just keeps going, I want to speak to Mary. I need to speak to Mary. I need to speak to Mary. I need to speak to Mary. And what you found out just before that is that Mary was the name that Evie was going to give the child if she had it.
Mm.
And so I think there were a lot of people who saw things like that and they just saw it as an anti-abortion message. But I don't think that's a fair portrayal of the movie. I think it was actually much more nuanced than that, because it wasn't preachy, it wasn't overtly religious, and it doesn't flatten Evie into a villain. Her fears are legitimate. Not everyone is ready to be a parent. Not everyone should be a parent at any given point in life. And at the same time, the film doesn't pretend like those decisions are clean or easy. Through that whole subplot of her mother's worsening condition, we are led to ask questions about the sanctity of life at both its beginning and its end, and how much it's worth living if you're just a shell of yourself, or if you might even be freer in death. And that's something you can only explore through the horror genre. And we start to see that the start and end of life are both often messy, they're gross, they're grotesque, they are horrifying, and often unable to be planned for. So I don't think that the film actually gave easy answers, but instead it presented both the mysterious connections that defy logic in birth and death, and also the horrors that can follow both of those. And I honestly found it to be really effective and compelling. Now, since you saw that with us, you have any follow-up thoughts on that movie?
I have to say that you are always you're a deep thinker, Colin. And when you say things like that, when you first mentioned that about, the beginning of life, the end of life, I'm like, oh, okay, I got to rewatch that.
Yeah, I don't think it's on streaming yet, but when it does, if you like horror movies, that's a cool
Yeah.
one to watch.
But the thing that bothered me about it was the mom, as she
Mm.
was, she, you know what I'm going to say.
Mm.
The, the boyfriend wanted Evie to go to a party, and Evie's like, I can't. I'm taking care of my mom. She can't, she can't be left alone. He's like, oh, she's not even going to know that you're gone. So she ends up leaving her mom. And I said to Colin, I said, I can't believe she left her mom with nobody there with her. And I said, son, how would, if I were on my deathbed, would you leave me to go to a party? And he's like, well, I need breaks too.
I'm just saying, if you've been there, you're the sole caregiver. Nothing has happened for several weeks. She's not even eating food or anything. She's not responding to you. She's just staying up there in bed. You've checked in on her, and nothing has happened for those 2 weeks. There is nothing that should suggest that if you go to a party for 2 hours, your mom's going to get possessed by a demon named Abusive.
No, but at the same time, okay, yeah, because when she came back, she was on the floor, just saying. But
Yeah.
but then I think, I think part of my thinking can be tied into my time in the church. Like, no, you don't rest. You just keep going. You keep doing and doing and doing at the expense of your own health. Now, if you said, Jana, I need you to sit with my mom while I go to a party, I would be okay with that.
Okay, but in this analogy, she's the estranged partner that did this party for me, so she's already at the party.
Okay, then get a neighbor or something. So I'm not there by myself. That made me so sad. But it did make me think, no, you can't leave. You have, like, forsake your own well-being, physical, emotional, for others. That was my immediate, how could you leave her? So I mean, I don't even think that's a reach to say that has to do with the church, but that's what it made me think of. That's probably why I responded that way. You're just supposed to keep. I mean, even to this day, I will say to your father, I'm like, I'm tired. I'm sitting down for a half hour. He's like, oh, I don't care. But in my old mindset, you don't sit down. You are constantly to be doing something. I still have a hard time with that. So one time Colin came into the house and I was sitting on the sofa. I think my feet were up. He's like, what are you doing? Like,
I had never seen it before. I thought something was wrong because she only sat down if she was deathly ill.
So anyway, I'm learning that, but it made me think of the church and, oh, that's conditioned in me. You don't leave, you don't stop doing. But yeah, so please, Colin, have somebody sitting with me.
I know we're joking about this, but I think that's actually part of what the film brings up, because it had a lot of questions it asked about end of life care. And I think part of what's coloring our experiences here as we talk too is we have had end of life care where we have dealt with family members who were maybe not unresponsive, but unable to care for themselves for periods of time.
Yeah, one was kind of not able to, I mean, three people.
And it's uncomfortable. There are no right answers when you're in those situations. And everything's just kind of on a case-by-case basis, and you will do things that you'll regret, you'll feel bad about. I'm just speaking to people now who maybe are in that situation or have been, and you have to give yourself grace, because there are no right answers when you're taking care of someone in a situation like that. And it's just doing your best and trying everything you can with the resources you have available to you.
Yeah, and you still have to take care of yourself, and in spite of all of it, somehow that has
Put
to
on
be
your own air mask first, and that's a hard boundary to draw when
but
the
you
other
have
person's
to.
dependent on you. But yes, you absolutely
have to. Yeah.
And the other two shows I want to talk about present two very different Christianities, but both are, in my opinion, excellent portrayals of Christianity from two very different sides. So these are both pretty violent superhero shows. The first one is called The Boys, and I will just put out right up front, this show is not for most people. It is vulgar, it is graphic, it is a lot. It has earned its R rating and then some. But one thing it does very well is critique how evangelicalism merges with political power. Because there is it's a minor thread through the seasons, but you see these evangelical groups that are modeled after like Campus Crusade for Christ or things like that, where they have these super abled human beings that have connected with those Christian movements because it gets them a following. And the more popular you are as a superhero in that universe, the more likely you are to be in their equivalent of the Justice League. Like you kind of have to earn your way up into the big leagues. And so they get these followings, social media, and getting people giving to these churches that are connected with the superheroes. And like in this universe, everything's run by a corporation. The superheroes are owned basically by like Amazon, which is pretty ironic because the show is out on Amazon Prime. And by the final season, you have Christians fully backing Homelander, who is an unhinged evil Superman. He is objectively unstable and dangerous, but the majority of Christians in the country are backing him because he says the right things that they want to hear. He calls people who don't believe in Christianity socialists, anti-American. He talks about protecting values. He uses just enough religious language to keep their support. And the church just goes along with it because he's using the language like baby killers, un-American, unpatriotic. They talk about abortion a lot in it. And even when he deifies himself in the final season, he declares himself God. The church just goes along with it. And that is not as unrealistic as we would like to think. Because we have seen real world versions of this. Now, obviously not with super abled human beings, but where behavior gets excused, minimized, or outright ignored because somebody who is talented aligns with the right quote unquote talking points. So The Boys explores power very poignantly. And it shows what happens when people can't say no and how they get in those situations where they feel like their life is at risk if they go against the person with power. So for all of its secular vulgarity, The Boys understands a truth that far too few Christians do. If your faith can be co-opted that easily by power, something has already gone wrong. And modern American evangelicalism has sold its soul to the American political machine in order to push a few key talking points about marriage, abortion, sexuality, overlooking serious abuse and crimes if someone is just willing to quote a few Bible verses.
Well, the abuser in the church.
Yep.
Same thing. He's saying the right things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even on a smaller scale.
Yeah. On the flip side, you have Daredevil Born Again. Now, Daredevil's alter ego is Matt Murdock. He's a lawyer. He's blind. And he is deeply Catholic. And the show actually lets that matter. And there's this moment between him and his partner in the law firm, his best friend, Foggy Nelson, they call him Foggy, where they're defending this guy who is absolutely guilty. And it just so happens that they found out that when he was a kid, he had bullied Foggy. So the fourth episode of this show has this incredible exchange between Foggy and Matt as lawyers when Foggy discovers a clerical error that would guarantee they're winning the case on behalf of this guy, his own childhood bully. And Matt balks at the thought of using the information because it was just a clerical error. He's like, we can't, yes, it should get thrown out, but the guy still deserves what he had coming. He was actually a criminal and he was a bad person. But then Foggy shoots back that it is their moral responsibility to make sure that justice is served legally and properly and that they get the case dismissed so the guy can get a second chance. It would not be right to judge him on information that was not actually legally obtained. And when Matt says that the guy doesn't deserve it, Foggy grills Matt on mercy and how that's supposed to be a part of his Catholic faith. And Matt doesn't act on it at the point. But then Foggy decides to give over all the money that they had kept up in savings to start their own law firm to that guy. Over $1,000 they've been saving case by case. He takes all the money out, goes to that guy once he gets out of jail, gives him a chance to leave town and start over.
Mm.
And Matt pushes him on it, says, the money was supposed to invest in our future. And Foggy says, yeah, but it's not just our future we're investing in.
Mm.
And in the show, that action turns out to literally save the man's life and then inspires Matt to save Bullseye in the current day. So that just, oh my gosh, it resonated with me so much. It was such a powerful scene to see this beautiful portrayal of Christian mercy, where in the circles we came from, it was often an excuse for abuse. Yeah, the abuser always deserves a second chance. Yeah, they'll do right this time. But it was so funny because of how we villainized Catholics and Disney and secular media and violent superhero shows. And I just saw one of the best portrayals of what Christianity can be in Daredevil Born Again, when mercy literally saved this man's life because Matt decided to live out his Christian faith.
Mm.
It's beautiful.
It sounds beautiful. And you know what I have learned being out of the church, that some of the kindest people that I have known are outside of the church.
Yeah.
You know, so they're teaching more of what Jesus taught. They're emulating it, you know, modeling it more than church people are.
Absolutely. I have seen that very much as well.
Mm-hmm. That sounds very good.
Yeah, I've loved that show.
It sounds like a tearjerker.
That was a great episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, Daredevil as a whole has been one of the best Marvel shows because Netflix did 3 seasons of it quite a while ago, and I may have watched totally legally downloaded copies in a dorm room where we weren't even allowed to watch YouTube.
The things I hear about your college years on this side. Yeah, don't tell me.
No, it is a fantastic show, and honestly, this revitalization of it in Born Again has been really good too.
My final point or reason for leaving the church was hypocrisy. And I really have one thing listed here. There are so many more, but this one stands out to me the most. So we were encouraged to give excessive amounts of money to the church.
Oh, yeah.
And to trust God to meet our needs.
And can we explain what we mean by excessive amounts of money here?
Okay. So you're taught that you are to give 10% of your gross income, which is the tithe.
So you were shamed if you didn't give a tithe. You were shamed if it was off of your net instead of your gross.
Yes. And you were shamed if it didn't increase each year. Because
yeah, that is true. Yeah.
You're supposed to be you're not supposed to stay at your initial tithe. Each year you're supposed to give more and more, and it increases your trust in God, your faith in him.
In addition to that, we also had faith promise giving, where you're supposed to give extra just to missions.
And you're supposed to give other things too, not just missions, but we had building funds and all kinds of things. They wanted you to give money for youth trips to help young people who really couldn't afford to go to them. You were asked to donate candy for the trunk or treat. You couldn't say trick or treat, but so many things you were asked to give. Christmas time, gift cards for the missionary tree. But the hypocrisy that really
just had a mental image of the giving tree. This is the opposite. It's the taking tree. We had the tree in the back of the church where instead of it giving to you, you had to give back to the tree.
Yeah, it was all giving. I mean, you're a Sunday school teacher. Give, buy your own supplies, whatever you need.
Yeah.
But the church, the leaders would not dismiss anybody who's being abusive on staff because they don't want to lose money from tithers, because tithers would leave. So, okay, you don't have to trust God to meet the needs of the church by doing what he would deem as the proper thing to do, but we have to do that. So we have to continue to give, but you don't, and trust, but you don't have to trust. Such hypocrisy there. Again, sharing the gospel, telling people how to be good Christians, and then not being a good one yourself. It's just constant. So that really set me over the edge as well. And that is my main example under hypocrisy.
No, that's very fair points. And eventually we're going to have an episode on tithing and what is actually in scripture and what's expected, because it is not at all what you have been taught.
How shocking.
Right?
Everything I've been taught is wrong.
There's this great Weird Al song you just put in my head. It was an old one from like the late 80s or early 90s called Everything You Know Is Wrong.
Yes, I believe that now. I know that now.
All right, one last big rant. You are going to love this. All right. Some of you listening are going to have absolutely no clue what I'm talking about here. And if that's you, I just want to say count your blessings. So there has been a situation that came out earlier this year about an online couple, Travis and Katie Clark. Travis Clark comes out of one of New Jersey's largest Baptist churches. They are extremely far right-wing, Christian nationalist, Ruckmanite, which is extreme King James only IFB church. He married into the Bates family, which is related to the Duggar family. Oh, you didn't know this?
No.
Oh, yeah.
I am not familiar with this.
One of little Clark's married into Bates. He's related by marriage to the Duggars. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So as soon as the Duggar name is mentioned, it should be no surprise when sexual misconduct is brought up. And I hate to be so blunt, but sexual crimes and infidelity are nearly guaranteed when you are so far up the butt of purity culture that you have reached IBLP in Gothard. So long story short, this couple, they're just an average Baptist couple, but they think they're social media influencers. And in an extremely tiny puddle, I mean, the kind of puddle that like it rained 5 days ago and this is the last little bit of water on the sidewalk, that is the size pond that he is a big fish in. Okay. He and his wife of only a few years now fancy themselves these social media celebrities, but the scale of their fame is a medium-sized fish in a ridiculously small pond. Well, Travis made waves in January where people outside of New Jersey, like I'm not just bringing this up because I actually know this guy, even though sadly I do. I am bringing this up because it actually, like, people nationwide were talking about this when they are in like fundy snark kind of groups. Back in January, he posted on socials that he, quote, was unfaithful to his wife. I had an affair and repeatedly broke her trust. There is no excuse for what I did. This was my failure and my responsibility alone. I know that words don't begin to express the damage I caused or the depth of the hurt I have brought into her life, but I am truly sorry. My mom's shaking her head right now. I'm sorry for the pain, humiliation, and betrayal I caused my wife through my choices. Now, as if that was not awkward enough to post on social media, he did this right after, literally within 24 hours, I believe within 10, it might have been within like 3 or 4 hours, after she had publicly posted about having a miscarriage. Notice then that in everything he said, nothing was stated about her current pain. It already had to be made about him. And my big beef with this is all of it could have been private. You are not as famous as you think you are. I drive by your house and I don't ever see you. I could have gone my whole life and never knew any of this happened. There is literally no reason that I needed to know this, let alone all the random people on social media who now got dragged into this family drama. And personally, I think that personal life and sexual life should be kept a lot more private than most funny churches would like to make it. Because I'll just tell you, folks, there is no agenda in the world to introduce your children to sex. Nobody talks about sex as much as evangelical and fundy Christians. They are the ones with an agenda who are constantly out there shouting about sex when there are impressionable children who haven't even gotten talked to about that at home. And what these circles call accountability, that's what he thought he was doing with this post, was staying accountable. It's just an excuse to be nosy. Even if you thought you needed to share this with your church for some reason, or your family, which, by the way, not necessarily given things, people can have private affairs, but just do that. Just share it with the family or with the church if you really wanted to. It definitely didn't need to be online, and it never should have been posted the same day, let alone right after she posted something again as private as a miscarriage.
And knowing that church, I could totally see them requiring him to get up in front of the church.
Right.
You know, because that's not uncommon for.
Oh no, we had far less egregious things that we forced people to stand up in church in front of, unless, of course, they were related to staff, in which case those things seem to fly under the radar.
And something that I recently heard about these fundies, that they do these horrible things and they say, oh, I deeply regret this. You know, they're saying they're sorry and they think that's it. I have sought forgiveness. I am good. We can move on.
Yes.
And it's just so frustrating to hear. Gosh. And that family is God's gift to the East Coast.
Oh, they think so. They are from
yeah.
New Jersey and they sing like they're from Tennessee. They travel around as a family singing group. It is super awkward, and they're not that good either. But okay, you know, I'm going to go on a side rant here. I'm going to bring a tangent rant into my main rant, since you just brought this up about confession, because I literally just took this note. Let me find, I have way too many Word documents open here on my computer, but I have one that I'm working on, some future shorts, and I was thinking about turning this into a short, but I guess we're going to bring it up now. Okay. Confession is not the same thing as being a good person now. I don't care what you've done, you know, whether we're talking you murdered someone or you just raised your voice to your kids or something, right? Like, whatever it is, so many Christians, this is not just an evangelical thing. It is honestly, I think, one of the weaknesses of modern Christianity is that there's this assumption that what matters most is confession, right? In more liturgical churches, there are actually times of confession, you know, like in the Catholic Church, you can have a confessional, but we didn't have that in the Baptist Church. But what we had were these calls for accountability, which really just meant a chance to air your dirty laundry in front of everyone else. It was group therapy with no licensed therapists, and honestly, not even volunteers with any qualifications. And it was just a chance to get things off of your chest, which, as a therapist, I can say that that's fair. So sometimes we need to do that. Personally, I'd prefer you do that with one trusted friend or a therapist rather than, you know, a 10 or 20 person church group, let alone social media. But there's this assumption that confession is the key. You just need to confess your sins and you're right. Like, we even had that in the gospel, right? That was our gospel presentation, is confess your sins and now you're saved. And that carried over after you were saved too, is just you have to confess. But confession is the first step in making things right. Confession does not make things right. It's like Alcoholics Anonymous, right? The first step is admitting you have a problem. That is what confession is it is admitting you screwed up. And that's fine. That's good. But so many Christians stop there.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like they got absolution from the priest, or they feel like, or, you know, in our circles, it was absolution from Jesus now because I said these words out loud. But all you have done is the first step. It does not undo what you did. It does not prevent you from doing it again.
Mm-hmm.
It just means you have acknowledged it. Anyone can acknowledge that they have done wrong. What matters is what you do after that to make it right.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in our fundy circles, how they handled what they consider to be sin is so weird. And obviously, I don't think it's good or excusable that he cheated on his wife in that way. It's not great he was unfaithful, but as far as I can tell, we also don't know, and by the way, we don't need to know what exactly that entailed. Because in those circles, being unfaithful could literally just be texting a female friend. It could be having an ad up on your computer with a woman in a bikini. It could be fantasizing about another woman. There are so many variables of what being quote unquote unfaithful to a fundamentalist could mean.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, she is probably going to be encouraged to not leave the marriage.
Oh, that has already been established on social media.
Really? Yeah, see, I was totally unaware of this because that would be frowned upon.
Yeah.
You know, for you need to forgive him. And, you know, and then I could even see, I don't know her. I don't personally know the family, you know, so I'm not saying this for sure. But as a woman in that kind of circle, you think, what did I do wrong? Was I not meeting his needs? So then you start this self-reflection of his cheating could possibly be my fault.
Absolutely.
In those circles, which is not healthy.
No.
Yeah.
No.
That's a shame.
It is. And none of this needed to be made public, right?
No, I agree.
He posted that, and by the way, there have been plenty of other people obsessed with analyzing fundy content that have addressed this in far greater detail, and they point out how Travis's interactions seem to invalidate or honestly just not even consider his wife's feelings. So if you know about this or have interest in it, there are plenty of other commentators that deal with like fundy snark kind of stuff you can actually go look up. He even posted later about quote unquote desperately fighting for my wife and family every single day, which makes it sound like the threat was external, or that if the marriage falls apart, it's no longer his fault because he's desperately fighting for it.
And the very fact that he posted it makes me think you think way too highly of yourself.
Yeah.
To think that you need to tell all these people, like, you have this great impact and reach. I must tell people what I did to make it right with them. And that's not your focus. Your focus is your wife, your family.
All right. So we probably just cut out like 5 minutes of me deep diving unnecessarily on the internet for stuff I don't need to know, but I did because I'm me, and I just had a brain explosion that obviously I'm not in this guy's head. I don't want to assume motives, but I'm about to assume motive here. Okay. If any of you are familiar with the name Philip Yancey, he was a very, very popular evangelical speaker and writer. He wrote a ridiculous number of books. I have owned several of his books. He would go on all kinds of speaking tours and everything. He was considered this paragon of evangelical virtue and doctrine and yada, yada. Well, he recently came out and admitted to having a multiple years long affair with someone that he knew. I believe it was a secretary or something like that. I don't know that they officially released her name. Now, this dude is 76 years old and in declining health. So there have been all kinds of commentators on whether or not he should have come out the way he did or what kind of repercussions there should be for his actions. Here's what I did not put together until just a second ago, and I just confirmed by doing some Google searching. So Philip Yancey's confession came out in about the first week of January. It was before January 10th because I found an article about it on January 10th. Travis Clark's post is from 1 week later. You want to bet he was guilted by seeing the great Philip Yancey's testimony tarnished and how he had to publicly apologize for it and thought that he should too? Because honestly, his social media posts are not that different in tone from what was posted about Philip Yancey. It was very much confession without much accountability, other than just Yancey was canceled from some speaking engagements.
That is very interesting.
It is. I don't know if for sure that they're connected. I mean, Philip
Right.
Yancey would have been a little too evangelical for that church, but he still probably would have been known by that family. Like, not personally, but known of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just funny how you see that kind. Well, it's not funny, it's sad how you see that kind of what you brought up, confession without consequence. Because now that I've made my amends by just saying I did wrong, making it about me, not thinking that, oh, I am now dragging this person that I have hurt over this time into a public spotlight that they probably didn't want to be a part of, just to clear my name. So it's still thinking about yourself. Just because someone apologizes for something doesn't actually mean they made it right. Sometimes it's just them making it worse because the focus is still on them and not on the victims.
But that goes right along with those circles.
Yep.
Wow. And then I see here when I was looking up Philip Yancey, should Christians still read Philip Yancey's books?
Right. Yeah. A
Yeah.
system that discourages honest private communication, but encourages public confession as a substitute for that, that is just performative. That's not healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Mm.
Well, thank you for bringing this to my attention.
All right. That is enough ranting for one episode. And who knows, we may even turn it into two by the end of this because we had a lot to talk about. And I even cut out some notes. So if you made it this far, I appreciate you. Thank you for sitting and listening to what we had to get out into the world.
I just want to thank you again for giving me an opportunity to talk about the things that I've experienced. I hope maybe it'll be a help to somebody else. You know, if they're maybe seeing things that they're starting to question, don't push it back to the back of your mind. You know, don't doubt what your heart is telling you. Because
or if you really want to be fundy about it, maybe that's the Holy Spirit convicting you, telling you that you should get out of there.
Yes, that's so. When you said that to me one time, I'm like, wow, because it's so opposite of what we were taught. But yes, yeah, it's like they manipulated the Holy Spirit and made it what they wanted it to be and not what God intended him to be. So, yeah.
Well, honestly, God is a Rorschach test, because if he doesn't have an audible voice, our voice becomes his voice. And he says whatever we want it to say. It's kind of funny how often God sounds like us and has the exact same beliefs we do.
Oh, no, I appreciate it. It's good to talk about and it's good to get out there. So
I agree. Well, thank you for coming on. And again, thank you all for listening. Seriously, let us know what you think about this format, whether you want more of these, less of these, never again. And for sure, let us know about the guest thing for Nehemiah. I believe our next couple episodes on here will be one-offs with guests. I don't know, should I spoil it? I haven't told anyone what some of the upcoming episodes are. Should I give them a little teaser?
Yeah, tease.
All right. So we have a returning guest. This is going to be his, fourth time on the podcast now. Tom Ord is coming back on.
Whoop, whoop.
But not for what you might think. We are not going to be talking about his systematic theology. We are not going to be talking about omnipotence. We are not going to be talking about God's power. I mean, I'm sure those things may come up, but that's not going to be the main topic. We are actually going to talk photography.
Whoa.
Yeah. That's
Oh,
going to
that's
be
a
a
good
really fun
teaser.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. In 2 days, I'm going to be recording an episode with a first-time guest. He is a philosophy professor at a local college, and he grew up Catholic. He no longer considers himself to be a Christian, but he does still believe in God, and he has a lot of really interesting insights through the lens of philosophy and theology that I think he can bring to the pod. Oh, there is another podcast I have been listening to, a relatively recent one with a guy who also brings some philosophical insights, but he specifically brings them into the realm of scripture, and particularly on the difference between believing in Jesus and following Jesus.
Mm.
I am really excited for that conversation. He seems like a decent guy. We've had some good conversations back and forth, just messaging on Facebook. So I'm excited for that. We also are working on a response episode to Fox's The Faithful Women of the Bible television show that they put out. That is going to be a little less complimentary than my reviews of movies and TV shows today. I'm working on a book review, short book that I read about whether church can help or possibly hurt your health, mental and physical.
I already know the answer. In my case.
Let's see. Oh, and one other thing I'll tease. This is not going to actually come to fruition for several more months now, but we are in the works to schedule a brand new big name guest on the podcast. Let's just say she has a book coming out later this year, and I just so happened to get a pre-published copy yesterday. I have quite a bit of reading to do because there's over 400 pages. But I am ridiculously excited. I think that's going to be one of the best episodes that we will have this year. Super, super pumped for that. And I will also let everyone listening know that as of today, we have officially decided the Bible Uncut and Unfiltered will be going to Theology Beer Camp 2026 in Kansas City, Missouri.
Woohoo!
So if you would like to see us in person, grab your tickets. Unfortunately, by the time you're listening to this, the early bird pricing will have passed, but I believe there is still one more tier before it goes to full price. You can check out, just Google Theology Beer Camp, and you can follow them on socials as well. You'll get the link for the events. It's a really, really cool, really nerdy event. So we're excited to be a part of it and hoping to see some of you there this year in October. I don't know if everyone's going to like this or not, but I feel like every once in a while we might need one of these, get a few things off the chest.
Oh yeah, I thought it was great, but I did talk. I did a lot of talking, so
and I still did the majority of it. But until next week, stay snarky and keep asking the questions they told you not to. You've been listening to the Bible Uncut and Unfiltered. We hope we provided a healing place to discuss the questions you can't ask and the context you won't learn in church. If you enjoyed the podcast, would you take a minute to share it with a friend? You could also rate and review on your podcast app. If you'd like to donate to keep our work going, you can go to our website, thebibleuncut.com, and click on the Support Us tab. While you're there, check out the recommended resources and blog where we post show notes and other articles. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.